This... So I have a lot of studio lights here, and bugs and flies absolutely adore them. They just get attracted to it like a magnet, you know? So I'm here drinking coffee in the morning, catching flies. So these speakers sound absolutely freaking amazing, but there's a big catch. Okay, so the speakers behind me right now is the new Tekton speaker from Tekton. It's a Troubadour speaker. I think I mispronounced it in my unboxing video. I'll link it in the description below. I think I said Troubadour instead of Troubadour and people were tilted. But anyways, this is the newest speaker from Tekton. It retails for $1,000 US. Comes in a variety of different shapes, no, not shapes, colors. But it comes in one shape, and it's a very unique looking speaker. Nothing like it really. As you can see, it's very flat looking, and it is a stand mount speaker. Except we'll talk more about that stand situation later on. Okay, so back to the stand, right? So as you guys saw in the B-roll, the stands I'm using with the Tekton Troubadour speakers are Wharfdale stands. And even the Wharfdale stands are not facing straight, it's actually on its side to accommodate the dimensions of the Tekton Troubadour because it's such a unique looking speaker with unique dimensions. It's a bit flat, and there's really nothing kind of like it in the market in terms of the dimensions I'm talking about. And we'll get to the sound in a minute. The sound is unique as well. But my question is, if you're going to make a speaker with a weird dimension, a unique design, then I think that these companies, like Tekton, should come up with stands dedicated to these speakers at a reasonably affordable price. Because this right now, the stands itself is $500 USD, which makes this combination $1,500. The stands are half the price of the speakers itself, which is not ideal if you are looking to buy this speaker on a budget. And then also the feet that comes with it, doesn't look so nice, so I switched it to a more high performing, better looking isoacoustic stands, and it looks much nicer. Now look is subjective, and I am not a fan of the look of the Troubadours. They kind of look like kind of alien to me and odd, and the paint job is kind of interesting, but I think that it will be appealing to some people, especially on a budget, because definitely the looks are not the selling point here, it's the sound. Okay, so here we have the Troubadour speakers, and the drivers are interesting, right? So we have 3 tweeters, right? 1, 2, 3, and then we have 2 4-inch paper pulp woofers, which is very interesting design. But paper, yes, paper sounds natural to me. And then we have the isoacoustic feet, as you saw earlier, and the stands. Now it looks not that bad in my opinion, but really, like I said, it's about the sound and the value that it provides with Tekton speakers. So here we have and these tweeters are not working to make high frequency, all of them. Only the middle one is the high frequency, and then these 2 on the top and bottom are mid-range drivers. It's replacing a mid-range driver, so to speak. And then we have the 4-inch woofers here playing the low frequencies as we speak. And then in the back, if I can show you, is a port. Bring that up here. Is a port. And it does have very high quality Cardis binding posts, which you don't really find in this price category, which is quite impressive in my opinion. Okay, so as you see behind me, the way I have these speakers set up is pretty triangular, meaning the distance between the speakers is equal to the distance I'm sitting at right now, listening to the speakers. So I'm kind of creating a equilateral triangle for my listening position. And the reason I do this for this speaker is because these speakers I found works best this way. In the beginning, I was quite troubled with this speaker. And a lot of people had questions, why I have the speaker for so long, why I'm not reviewing it. And I have been. The fact of the matter is, I want to try my best to make a speaker sound good, but I was having a little bit of trouble, so I contacted Eric, got a little bit of his design background, and it finds out that these speakers are not really meant for, office listening, meaning if I stand up and move around, right, or have the speakers in a non-equilateral formation, for example, as I have here, then it won't sound very good. And quite frankly, according to Tujan, right, my friend Tujan, he described it as a car audio sound. And it's kind of like that. It's a good car audio sound, and he agrees as well. But it's not a stereo, great sound for $1,000. But once you find the sweet spot, meaning you have to sit here. This is a speaker for a single person that wants great sound in a non-ideal room situation. So what do I mean by non-ideal room situations? So I've seen people that have square rooms, right? And square rooms are terrible sounding. One of the worst rooms I've ever heard was a square room. And that's not to offend anyone that has a square room, right? It can sound good, but it's very hard to sound good in a square room. But this kind of speaker that allows you to be sitting in a equilateral formation to have that sweet spot perfectly on and not bounce around the walls too much, affecting the sound too much. Mainly, it's very directive. So that allows this speaker to behave in such a way that is ideal for non-ideal rooms. So for people that wants a great sound in a condo, for example, that doesn't have a lot of room to play around with, this speaker is great because also it allows to be pushed back against the wall behind them. So you know how I always talk about bring the speakers out more, bring the speakers out more? This speaker actually sounds better when it's pushed against the wall about 4 to 8 inches away from the wall behind them. It gives you very good bass emphasis, and yes, it's ported in the back, but it's ported in the back and tuned in such a way so that it can be closer to the wall. And remember how these are shaped. Remember, they are pretty flat. So the way they are, they're kind of allowing people to save more room, and they're kind of making the volume sideways so that it's not going to protrude out into the room more, allowing you to pull them out further into the room without making it seem like they're so intrusive to the rest of the furnitures. So just to add to what I said there, every speaker cabinet needs volume. So the volume is added this way instead of the traditional this way, so that you can have it a little bit more flush to the wall without being, kind of intrusive to the rest of the room and making it clean looking. So once you have the speakers in an equilateral formation or equilateral triangle, these sound nothing like any other speakers really, like floor standers or bookshelf speakers for that matter. They don't sound anything like other speakers because they're so uniquely designed. And one of the compromises I had to personally make was to actually get rid of my footstool here because, I need to get closer to the speaker. But you guys wouldn't have to make that kind of, compromise because you guys now know, watching this video, that you are meant to get these speakers for near field or, kind of like a small condo room, square room. So these speakers are great for small rooms. Now, these speakers are not as efficient as the Tekton Lures or other Tekton speakers for that matter, but they are about 90 dB in sensitivity, I believe. And so they are closer to you, so you don't need to drive them with a lot of power because they're closer to you. They're gonna get plenty loud fairly easily. So I've been driving them with speakers, amplifiers like the Boyurang here, which is like 8 watts per channel integrated amplifier. Sound incredible. The cheapest, but sounds the best in my setup right now with those. And I have some solid state amplifiers here as well, which is a NAD C298 and the Iota VX stack, which, you know, they cost a little bit differently, but both solid state amplifiers sound good. So really, these speakers sound good with any type of gear, as long as it's quality, and they do sound better and better depending on the matching. And like I said, it's not always about price. The Boyurang does sound better in my opinion with these speakers. Now, a little bit more about the sound here. So in terms of sound staging, they are limited by the physical plane of the speakers because of the way they are designed to be more directive, right? So meaning that, you know, the sound stage is kind of here. You're not going to get too much more than this. But with the tube amplifier, you do get a little bit more, and that's the main defining difference here. You're not getting a whole lot more, but just a smidge more. Now with the tube amplifier though, what you do get more, like evidently more than the solid state amplifier, is that when you're sitting and listening to the speakers, between you and the speakers, there's more stuff floating around, kind of being more three-dimensional sound. So it's very interesting, very textured is the way I would put it. Now the depth, meaning how far it goes past the speakers behind them in terms of the sound stage, is really dependent on how much you pull the speakers out of the room. Now these speakers, I just don't have them, you know, out into the room a lot more, but I could, and if I do, then I will get more depth. So it really depends on how much you can pull them out of the room. But you do pose a problem when you do that. If you pull them out of the room, you're kind of trading it with the bass response. The bass is kind of dependent on how far you push these speakers towards the room behind them. And when you do push them closer to the wall, you do get more bass response. And it's not a nasty, like bloated, you know, room gain, so to speak, but it's a tasteful room gain, and you do get a pretty darn impressive bass for using two 4-inch drivers. Now obviously you're not gonna get heft, you're not gonna get grip, you're not gonna get, you know, really dynamic, you know, deep extension like if you were using a big floor stander or subwoofers for that matter, but you do get good clean extension down into the, you know, 50 hertz region. So for most music, it's plenty powerful, and the bass is very punchy, and I wouldn't say it's the tightest bass I've heard, but it is very textured, meaning when a bow scrapes, you know, that scrape is just so textured. And one of the things that I really like about Tekton speakers is that their tonality is pretty great. I mean, I think it's because their designer Eric actually plays drum himself, and I'm a drum player as well. And when I first played the drums on the Tekton Pendragon, I believe, my neighbor asked me if I was playing drums in my house. Now, I don't have space for drum in my house anymore, so I don't play as much. But that just shows how impressive these speakers are when you know, mistake someone actually playing drums on the other side of the wall. Anyways, jokes aside, these do have great tone with strings, especially voices. And that's why I think these kind of sound like a hybrid between a Harbeth speaker, a more expensive Harbeth speaker, and a Pendragon, Tekton Pendragon. So you do get that bass, you know, gut and texture in the bass region, but the mid-range is just so smooth. Just so smooth. It may be, in fact, more, you know, too smooth for some of you, especially if you pair it with something like a smooth sounding DAC like the Hollow May, or, you know, too smooth of a tube amplifier. It may sound too smooth, so pairing is very important if you want to get that just right amount of smoothness. Now the high frequency is quite interesting too. The high frequency is not bright whatsoever, but it's just on the edge, and it's refined just enough so that it's not piercing at all. It's not piercing whatsoever, but you do get that kind of floaty high frequency with solid state amplifiers, a lot more than tube amplifiers, quite ironically, I think the high frequency is more refined and more extended and more airy with solid state amplifiers. So you gain some, you lose some. It's always a compromise. You can't get everything. And in terms of imaging as well, really great imaging, because remember, you're in an equilateral triangle. So the imaging is perfectly down the middle. It's just straight in the middle right there. Like you can almost reach and grab the singer. Don't know why people say that or why you would want to do that. Like, come here, like just listen to them, like come here. But anyways, you know, you get the point. It's very pinpoint, absolutely lovely imaging. Really enjoyed the time I had with these. Imaging was a big part of it, but again, you're not gonna get, you know, best imaging with tube amplifiers. I think the best imaging with these speakers is with solid state amplifiers. So again, you lose some, gain some. But if you're more about, not so much about imaging, but more holographic presentation and things floating in the air, more things, you know, kind of the scale of sound kind of, you know, engulfing you, then I think tube amplifiers is the better choice. And that's what I preferred with these speakers. Yeah, so that's pretty much it from me. If you guys have any questions, make sure to comment them below. Let me know, and I'll try to answer as much as possible. And I'm just gonna keep on trying to catch more flies. Well, this one on the lens.